It's time once again for RFA Insider.
So that was Amy, and I'm Eugene, and...
Are you okay?
Well, I'm fine. It's just, this is the 4th episode of our podcast, and, 4 is an unlucky number in many Asian languages, because it sounds like the word for death.
I didn't take you for the superstitious type, Eugene.
Are you kidding? Superstitions are real.
Okay, well, today on RFA Insider, we have 2 stories in the rundown. One from the Korean service and one from the Lao service.
And then on how it's made. I just got a paper cut. It's like I'm jigs today.
And then, on how it's made, we have Shen Ke from the Asian Fact Check Lab to tell us all about fact-checking and debunking disinformation in the news. And, maybe he can do some fact-checking into the superstition that 4 is unlucky.
Hey, that's a good point.
Maybe he will. Stay tuned to RFA Insider to find out.
You're listening to the RFA Insider podcast, made by 2 real-life staffers at Radio Free Asia.
If you'd like to send us feedback, there are many ways you can do this.
You can send us an email at insider@rfa.org.
You can comment on our webpage at rfa.org/English/insider. Just click on the episode you're listening to and write your comment below.
Or you can send us a tweet at RFA Insider or visit us in person.
No, don't visit us in person.
Right, don't visit us in person. But anyway, we really want to hear from you.
So tune in every other Friday and we'll take you behind the scenes.
And tell you what the news really means here at RFA Insider. Okay, so welcome back to RFA Insider. I think that opening was kind of our first attempt at acting something out, and so, since I wrote it. But anyway, on the superstition about 4 being unlucky, people actually do believe this.
So this stems from Chinese, okay, let me invoke my tones, where 4, 4, sounds like the word for death, 4.
Ah, I see. So it's just a different tone. So in Japanese, both characters are read as shi in onyomi, though there are other pronunciations. And in Korean, both words are pronounced sa. The character for death sounds like the number 4. So this is the reason that buildings in Asia often don't have a 4th floor sometimes. They either skip it or they replace the digit with the letter F.
Thus, to keep the rest of our recording going hopefully smoothly, we'll informally dub this episode 3B, or F. But at any rate, it's time for another edition of
Podcast Free Asia!
I can't even read this shit. Oh my gosh. Let me see. Where are we? Okay. So, in the second half...
You know what? Forget it. So in the second half of today's show, we were going to feature Shen Ke, which is a pseudonym, but he wants to distort his voice and hide his identity, so I brought in that awesome Darth Vader mask. But it's a little bit too cumbersome, so I think we'll just have to do that in post. Anyway...
You don't know the power of the dark side.
Yeah.
Can you say, Luke, that's factually incorrect?
Luke, that's... Actually, since we're talking about fact-checking, Darth Vader never said, Luke, I am your father. Did you know that? Yeah, the line is, no, I am your father.
No.
So he never said that. Yeah, it's like the Mandela effect thing. I don't know if you've ever...
There's no gravitas to that.
No, because it's like Obi-Wan never told you what happened to your father. So he told me enough. He told me you killed him. So, no, I am your father. So there's gravitas to it, but the line is often misquoted. It's one of the many lines in movies that are misquoted, just like in The Wizard of Oz, Dorothy never says, hey, Toto, I don't think we're in Kansas anymore. Like, she never said that, but for some reason it's always attributed to her. But anyway, we're not talking about science fiction and pop culture and movies, unfortunately, today. But so in Podcast Free Asia today, first thing I would like to do is issue a correction. In episode 3, we discussed Thailand's parliament passing a bill that would legalize same-sex marriage. But the way I discussed it may have misled listeners into thinking that same-sex marriage is legal in Thailand now. At the time of recording, it was Thailand's lower house that approved the bill. And then the Senate approved it this week. So the bill will be further examined by the Senate, and then Thailand's king will have to sign and approve it. So it's almost there, but what we can say is that it will likely pass, but it's not quite there yet. Okay, so sorry for any confusion to any listeners out there. Next, another correction. We talked about traditional medicine last time with the bears and the punny bears, right? And so in that episode, I was talking about Korean traditional medicine, and it's called Hanyak, and I said it means Chinese medicine. Well, language evolves over time, and now the Han in Hanyak is not the Han meaning China, it's the Han meaning Korea. I discovered this when I was using the Naver dictionary to get official translations for Hanyak from the last episode. The Chinese characters, I didn't pay attention to it when I was preparing, but actually the Chinese character showed that it was the Korean Han and not the Chinese Han. Anyway, so that didn't seem right to me because I had said it was Chinese medicine in English, but still the character Han didn't mean Chinese. So I conferred with Ijin from the Korean service, and she did a little digging for me, and apparently this change from the Chinese Han to the Korean Han, that occurred officially in 1986. But the rationale behind that is because the Korean traditional medicine has an origin in China, so that's why it was called with the Chinese Han before. But since its first arrival, it's kind of diverged and has developed along a different path so that now it's uniquely Korean. So in 1986, even though the changes had been going on for hundreds of years, I guess they decided, hey, maybe we shouldn't be calling this Chinese medicine. And they changed it to the Korean Han for Hanyak, but they still call it Chinese medicine in English for some reason. There's also a competing theory that there was a decision made to de-Sinify vocabulary, and this has manifested itself in many other examples where the Chinese Han is used for Korean things, but that's a very, very long tangent that we won't get into today.
Interesting. Yeah, I guess given that the change is only perceptible in Hanja, the characters, I wonder how many, I guess, everyday Korean people know of this shift.
Yeah, it's interesting you mentioned that. When I asked her about it initially, she's like, no, it means the Chinese one, right? And I was like, no, it doesn't, because if you look at the dictionary, she's like, oh, really? I've never paid attention to characters. I just always assumed it was the Chinese one, but, this changed in 1986, and I guess people haven't really caught up to it. But that's enough of Podcast Free Asia today, and let's get into The Rundown.
The Rundown.
All right, so this is The Rundown, and our first story, at risk of making this first half too much about Korea, our first story is from North Korea, from the Korean service, and it's about the government mandating that college students stop using bags slung over their shoulders like those rotten capitalists.
What?
Instead, they need to carry them on their backs or in their hands like good socialists. This is the latest type of crackdown on so-called capitalist culture, quote-unquote, and this has been a big thing that the government has been preoccupied with since the passage of the Rejection of Reactionary Thought and Culture Act in 2020. So RFA has covered crackdowns on several different behaviors that they have deemed to be anti-socialist, and many of these are things that people in North Korea learn by watching illegal South Korean movies and TV shows, and these are usually smuggled into the country on USB flash drives and SD cards, and then distributed from person to person. The North Korean authorities worry that if Hallyu, which is what the South Koreans call the Korean wave, hits North Korea too hard, then it will erode the North Korean national identity. So, Amy, I'd like to ask you to try and guess some of the behaviors that have been cracked down
on. I guess since we're drawing from dramas and movies, no slow burn romances with your childhood best friend.
Oh, so you're saying you've watched some of these dramas and that always happens?
I'm drawing from the K-drama tropes here.
Okay, yeah.
No entering sham marriages for convenience.
Or no having amnesia and taking a sabbatical to go to the United States for studies, right?
No cross-dressing for the plot.
Oh, no cross-dressing for the plot. That was a good one, wasn't it? She's talking, of course, about Coffee Prince, which... Anyway, the government did actually crack down on people for dating at certain monuments that were supposed to praise the national founders and national heroes, right?
So like no having dates in those locations.
Yes, but that was not related to capitalist culture. It was just you want to be respectful to these people who are like supposed to be national heroes.
Gotcha.
But no, here are the things, the behaviors that they have cracked down on that we have reported on. They've punished people for wearing blue jeans. They punished women for wearing shorts, but not men. Yeah, so apparently it's not ladylike to wear shorts.
Can you wear skirts?
I think they have to be below the knee. I'm not sure about that, but I think the miniskirts have also been mentioned. I'm sure they have cracked down on it, but we haven't covered that.
Okay.
Talking using South Korean words. Now, there's a divergence in language between North and South Korea. Some words that are in South Korean vocabulary are not in North Korea, and I guess if you're watching lots of TV dramas and movies, you will adopt some of the speech styles. And
so it's like a giveaway that you've been engaging.
Exactly. Like, for example, you're not supposed to call, like a lot of Korean girls will call their older male friend oppa, which means basically older brother. In North Korea, you're supposed to use the word comrade.
Okay.
So they say if people are calling each other oppa in text messages, they're, haha, you've been watching these South Korean media, so we got you. Here's another one. Calling South Korea either Hanguk or Daehanminguk, which is the official name. North Korea calls itself Chosun, so they don't want to use Han to refer to Korea.
Okay.
Cohabiting with a member of the opposite sex while not being married. They've cracked down on people for that. They have made suggestions that you're not supposed to have a lavish wedding ceremony to kind of keep it low-key. They've punished people for singing not South Korean songs, but songs that are sung in a way that sounds like they might be based on K-pop. So K-pop style songs.
More like poppy tunes then.
Yeah, well, I mean, if it's deemed to be in the South Korean style, you know what I mean? So
Okay.
it's kind of very arbitrary and vague there, I think. But I guess...
Yeah, that leaves a lot of room for interpretation.
Right. Yeah, let's see, what else have we got here? Using South Korean products, possessing South Korean money, tinting your car windows, lending money at interest, offering rides on a bike or motorcycle for a fee, collecting rent on anything, and of course, the big ones, making phone calls to the outside, especially to South Korea, and watching or distributing foreign media where all of these illicit capitalist behaviors are learned.
That was a less fun list than I was anticipating, I think.
Oh, what were some of the other things that you were hoping to see?
I thought it would be more, I guess, relationship-based, or
Okay.
no PDA, no like matchy-matchy couple outfits.
Oh, yeah. I don't think people would get punished for that because everybody's supposed to be wearing the same thing anyway,
Fair
right?
enough, yeah.
For the one about watching or distributing foreign media, RFA has documented people being sentenced to death or publicly executed for helping the quote-unquote invasion of capitalist culture that needs to be defended against at all costs for the continuation of North Korea's socialist revolution. Rejection of reactionary thought and culture acts seemingly only applies to the masses. The elites enjoy flaunting their wealth with their fancy cars, fancy name brand clothes, imported whiskey and cognac, and other status symbols that signify personal wealth and power. So while the rest of the people struggle to make ends meet, and in some cases they don't even know where their next meal is coming from, you know, they're still cracking down on these people. And heaven forbid that a college student sling a purse over her shoulder as she dashes off to class.
Man.
Pretty rough, pretty rough.
All right, so...
But on a lighter note, hopefully.
I'm not sure, but
Okay.
let's see. So I ended up having another Lao wildlife tale for you today. So in northern Laos, a villager posted Facebook videos of himself fishing in the Mekong River before deleting them.
Okay.
So you might think fishing videos are pretty uncontroversial, so why
Right.
would he delete them? So I've shared a few of the videos with you, Eugene.
So there was one where a guy was in a fishing boat and he throws something into the water, and then there's this explosion. And then he's all smiling and giving the thumbs up sign, and we can see that he caught several fish from the one blast, and a catch like that with a fishing rod might take all day. And then later on in the video, there's a different angle, and he does the same thing, and we can see that he's caught a whole bucket of fish. And you know, when you were going to do this story, I thought it sounded kind of fishy. But also, this has the potential to be an explosive story.
Right. So this is actually called grenade fishing. It's where fishermen chuck grenades into the water and basically just blow up that little section of the sea or the river or the ocean.
Oh, I've been told by the higher-ups that this is not a grenade. It's a type of explosive, but grenades imply, like, manufactured for warfare purposes.
Oh, I see.
Yeah.
So I guess it's the umbrella term. There's other words, blast fishing as well, where you use explosives. And then, so what happens after you chuck the grenade in, the fish will float up, and then you'll just collect them. They'll either be stunned or dead, and it's much easier than traditional net fishing.
Yeah, I've always been curious about this. I've seen this happen in like several movies, and there are a lot of videos of it happening all over the world. But I feel like there's more at play to this story. And you've explained it a lot, but I just want to know, is this just the hook, or does it go deeper?
So that was the hook. We are delving deeper.
Okay.
It is illegal for a number of reasons, the main one being that it basically destroys the entire underwater ecosystem. And on top of that, most fish don't float, they just sink. So you're scooping like maybe 10% of the catch and just killing off the rest.
Oh, my. So this is just an easy way to get ahead, but it's damaging to the environment and to the fish. And so while the guy in the video is all smiles, if he's caught, because it's illegal,
Right.
maybe he'll be singing a different tuna.
Yes. They'll be canning him in jail.
Oh, that's a pretty good one. All right.
So RFA interviewed some local residents, and they said that the fish sold at their local markets were suspiciously pristine. And I say suspiciously because fish caught using nets usually have a lot of damage to their scales from struggling. Right?
Yeah. You know, I find that surprising. I would think that if they were blasted by a grenade, they'd be like blown to smithereens, right?
You'd think maybe a few, but the rest just from the ensuing blast.
Oh, the shockwave or something? Yeah, okay.
So authorities have since opened an investigation since they found the videos. But just to derail a bit, the situation reminds me of something I did recently, which was buy a plane ticket.
Oh.
So on the last page before checkout, you have this option of offsetting your carbon footprint.
Oh, yeah, I've seen that. Okay.
Yeah.
So that's interesting.
You basically just pay the airline some money, some extra fee, and then they'll invest that in planting trees or investing into like some other eco-friendly initiatives. So like we all know flying is bad for the environment, but personally I don't feel super obligated to pay more to offset the damage that I've caused, knowing that, you know, it's the elites to go after the elites again. With the private jets who are the ones generating half of the world's carbon emissions from flying.
Really? Private jets are, well, I guess that makes sense, you know, because, you know, buses do emit more than cars, but it's not the bus's fault that emissions are so bad, right?
Yeah,
I guess there's more private jet flights going out there. I can see that. So the airlines are then putting this into play for PR purposes to show that they care.
Yeah, just to feel like you have some sense of control over the situation, I suppose. But much in the same way, back to Laos, hydropower dams being built by China, Cambodia, and Laos have completely disrupted the Mekong River over the last few decades.
Yes, a reoccurring story that we often hear about.
Yeah, in a much more widespread way than grenade fishing or blast fishing. So the dams have thrown off natural water levels and they've disrupted fish migration and reproduction, to the extent that a lot of fishermen we've interviewed over the past few decades say there's no longer any fish left for them to make a living. So, which isn't to defend the fishermen blowing up river ecosystems, but just to say that grenade fishing isn't necessarily the root of the issue here, but maybe just a reaction to dire times.
Okay, so the dam issue is a very serious problem for the environment. It's not just the environment, though. I mean, it's also that people are often being kicked off of their land and made to relocate, and they've been living there for generations, and they live off the land by being farmers, and so they relocate them to different areas and say, okay, well, make a living doing the same thing, but, you know, it's not as fertile. And what was their home is now sitting under, like, a giant man-made pond because of the dam. And this is all part of Laos wanting to become the so-called battery of Southeast Asia, where they will generate power and then sell it to neighboring countries like Vietnam and Thailand as a way to boost their economy, is what it's been sold as.
You know, like even Cambodia has kind of halted progress on the hydropower dams just from seeing the negative environmental effects.
Yeah.
So you could say we have lots of big fish to fry.
All right, are you finished?
I am.
All right. So let's go on to how it's made.
어떻게 만들었지?
他们录皮打嘞。
怎么做的?
How it's made.
So the Asia Fact Check Lab was a new initiative put in place a little more than a year ago, and its focus is to counter disinformation in today's complex media environment. Today's guest is
Shen Ke.
Yes, who handles a lot of the translation from Chinese to English for the AFCL, which is the Asian Fact Check Lab. That name is a pseudonym that he uses because he wants to hide his identity. So, with the power of technology, we have the ability to disguise his voice. We're not going to use the Darth Vader mask. So, Shen, can you say something?
Luke, that's factually incorrect.
I don't know about that voice. Let's try a different one. How are you today?
Supercalifragilisticexpialidocious.
Yeah, I don't really like that one either. Nice weather we're having, eh? Okay, that one's actually pretty good. Why don't we go with that one? All right. Can you give us a brief self-introduction?
Yes. Well, I guess since we're doing voice altering that you won't be able to pick it up, but I'm originally from the good old South. Grew up there, and after graduating college, got a job in learned Mandarin while I was over there, spent a few years there, came back, and picked up this gig with AFCL.
Now, I just want to say that the first time I met Shen, he was very unassuming, and then suddenly he just bust out in Mandarin, and I'm like, what the heck? And how is he that good? Did you grow up in China? He's like, no, I just studied in my spare time. And I was like, what are you talking about? How is that possible?
I think he's exaggerating here, but thank you. This makes me feel good anyways.
So, for context, did you have any Mandarin knowledge
No.
before you moved to
No.
Beijing?
I was a green. Is that what they say? A newbie?
You
were green.
I was green. I was green.
You were totally green.
When I graduated college, I had studied unsuccessfully Spanish and Italian, respectively, in high school, and got a job in China, got to pay the bills, and I was like, oh, okay, this was on my list originally. Let's bump it up to number 1. And
cool.
And so that was the beginning of 7 years now.
Okay, well, I mean, we won't reveal too much about your past since you are disguising your voice. So I'm not going to ask you where in China you were, what you were doing exactly. You can be the international man of mystery on that front. But so let's get into today's segment. There's been a saying that's been attributed to both Vladimir Lenin and Joseph Goebbels that a lie told often enough will become the truth. And ironically, it's hard to prove that either of those people ever said that. But I use the quote here anyway because this is precisely the kind of thing that the AFCL wants to eradicate, right? So in research for this, I also found that there's a difference between disinformation and misinformation. Disinformation is false information that is deliberately intended to mislead, while misinformation is just false information without necessarily having that intent. And I guess the AFCL wants to counter disinformation, but they may also likely go after misinformation in the process of doing that. Is that correct?
Yes, that's a fair way to say things. Most of besides the prefix, the core difference between disinformation and misinformation is intent, right?
Right.
And so some of it does happen to just be netizens mindlessly retweeting stuff, of course.
Right.
But safe to say the majority of it is disinformation.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. So moving on to questions. So as we said, AFCL is a relatively new development at Radio Free Asia. Could you briefly describe what it is and what it does exactly?
AFCL was initially pitched to me as focusing on misinformation in China, the Sinosphere, the broader Sinosphere, right? Misinformation predominantly coming out of China, but also from Taiwan. That's been another big hotspot for us. Hong Kong, which I guess is that a part of, I guess, nominally not
nominally, technically, like actually.
We'd like to fact check that.
I'm gonna hear that. I'm gonna hear that rebuttal a lot. I think.
No, but I'm curious though. Like, what is the situation of like rumor spreading and like people just spreading things around that aren't actually true, but actually believing them in China? I mean, I know that happens in many different places, even here in the U.S. But some countries, I think, have populaces that might be possibly more gullible than others?
Would you say that? No, I would not. I would not phrase it as more gullible. I would actually say, on average, the average educated Chinese individual that I met in my time there, granted, mind you, understanding I did not travel across the whole country in the specific places I was probably better at quote unquote reading between the lines, reading news than the average American citizen. Just as I would say, former individuals from the USSR that grew up through that time were, on average, better news readers, meaning able to not just read for facts, but actually say, okay, what's the intent behind this piece of information? Why am I being told this? This kind of level of thing. But online, the actual information you do see on the Chinese internet, I would agree with your sentiment. What you're coming at there is that there often is a lot of bogus information there. But while there's also in English, the key difference being here that a lot of the bogus information you might see on the popular Chinese social media platforms such as Weibo and Douyin, the Chinese version of TikTok, is
Weibo is like Chinese Google.
Yeah, Weibo is
Twitter.
like
Twitter.
Chinese Twitter. That's better. Yeah.
Or X.
Oh yeah.
formerly
known as Twitter.
Twitter.
I stopped it. By the way, I kind of get a kick that we still add that to a lot of scripts. I thought like, okay, we'll add that for like a month, and then people will now be aware that this is like X, right? Anyways,
I don't think X is. Yeah. No. So like what you're saying is, you're probably right. I probably shouldn't have said gullible back, but there is also the way that people want to believe things that make themselves or their country
feel better.
Feel
right?
good.
There is a very hard nationalist sentiment and populist sentiment currently in China. Yes, that is fair to say. So what are, I guess as a thought experiment, what are some supposed facts that you, we can start Amy, just to pick one randomly, grew up sincerely believing were true, but, somewhere along the lines you had that awkward moment of realizing, what? This isn't real? What are you talking about, man? And not believing it for a second and having to actually go check something.
Mine would be that when I was a kid, we would have liquid silver on stock at home, and it's like a homeopathic supplement that you're supposed to take to like bolster your body. It's supposed to like just be good for you in capital letters if you're sick. So I'd take a spoonful every time I had like a cold or a fever. And then I grew up and realized that it does nothing for you. Your body can't release it from its system, and if you take too much, it'll turn you blue permanently.
Yeah, there's this one story of this really old guy who, I thought it was called colloidal silver, actually.
Yes, that's another name for it.
So there was this really old guy that actually did physically turn his skin blue from taking so much colloidal silver, and like people, if you see a picture of him, it's like, oh, it's Papa Smurf. Like,
yes,
it's really, really dark. I wondered, but you don't have any blue skin. So
thankfully, I was fact-checked before I turned blue or succumbed to the silver.
But you grew up believing that. That's surprising.
And funny, so did you just did somebody just lose interest in the liquid silver when you were young, or something? Like, did you take it all through, or did your mom at a certain point?
It was just like it ran out. It was expensive to buy, so she just got lazy or something, just didn't feel like buying anymore. And then just like in high school, I think that was when the blue guy came into prominence.
So I wonder, what was the reaction when you said, hey, mom or dad, like, maybe we shouldn't be taking this? Were they
I think their reaction was like, oh, well, you're not taking it anymore.
Good thing.
Yeah.
Okay, for me, so there's these are kind of silly. In high school, there was this belief that Paul on the Wonder Years grew up to be Marilyn Manson. So everyone believed that, and it's definitely not true. So The Wonder Years was that popular TV show from the 90s that was about growing up in the 60s. And the character of Paul was played by actor Josh Saviano, who is not Marilyn Manson, the eccentric musician, because that guy's name is really Brian Warner. Yes. And then the second one is, people still believe this today, that the Great Wall of China can be seen from space with the naked eye. And some versions even suggest that it can be seen as far away as the moon with the naked eye. But, I looked this up a bit. The apparent width of the Great Wall from the moon would be the same as trying to see a human hair from 3 kilometers away. So, no, you can't see the Great Wall of China from space unless you're in an extremely low orbit and conditions are perfect. And low orbit meaning like within 100 miles, and most orbits.
To take that myth out even back further one step, is there any man-made object that you can actually see from space?
Well, I mean, you can see cities and things like that, or even desert roads, but it depends on. Yeah, it has to be like perfect conditions and a low orbit,
That's
right?
cool.
So
I remember that, hearing the Great Wall myth.
And like it's been the answer on like Jeopardy.
Yes.
Like, no, that's not right.
No,
that guy should have lost.
Really? Oh, that's interesting.
All right, but that is to say, these are all the things. These are a bunch of things that we all believed that have been fact checked now, and they are all false.
Yes.
Is that correct? Okay, so you were one of the first people to be. What a great segue. Hired specifically for the Asian Fact Check Lead. You're one of the first. What exactly was it about this job that attracted you to it?
In my leisure time, the person who I am is a historian and maybe a writer, humanist, but I don't see that as my quote-unquote job, if you know what I mean. I don't expect to make money off that and support myself. But I would like fields that could have skills which have transferable skills allow me to do good work in those. So being a translator and writer for topics related to China, to the Sinosphere more broadly, which is, again, the culture I've been kind of devoting the last 7 years of my life, basically, to, was very appealing. And it's turned out as well to have a really, really thoughtful and resourceful leader in my manager, CT Lee, give it a shout out here, the one and only, has been really, really cool with that, and also full of a team, just a very full team. I didn't know this at the time, but it's turned out to be a very full team. A team very full of energy and goodwill toward each other, which is not something you can say at every job, right?
I did want to say that although we've been focusing a lot on China in our discussion here, that AFCL also does cover all the other broadcast areas of Radio Free Asia and sometimes even outside of the broadcast area.
Yes,
so.
that's been one of the. This is actually a question I asked in my initial interview when I was initially interviewing for the job and wanted to know, okay, Asia Fact Check Lab, do you have plans to expand to the other services RFA covers and provides? And the answer was a tentative yes, meaning not in the short term, but the person I was talking with did make it clear, yes, we would like that and that we would like that in the future.
Yeah, and the Korean fact checking is handled by a Korean language speaking staffer in the Taipei office, I believe.
Yes, a English editor, our English editor Taijun, Taijun Kong, I want to give a shout out to, who's been just a joy to work with.
Taejun.
Taejun.
No, it's okay.
But he specific. I remember I didn't call him this. He specifically does not want to be called TJ though. He specifically does not want.
Yeah.
I remember he shot somebody down on that one. But I think if I mispronounce it a little bit, I think he'll forgive.
No, I mean, like, I get on people for names like that, but I messed up your pen name, so...
Everybody does. So
everybody does that kind of stuff. People mess up my family name because it's spelled weird all the time. So, but it's just been a pet peeve of mine. Like, when I'm talking about Spider-Man and people will write it out, and I'll be like, "There's a hyphen in there," and it's a capital M because it's Spider hyphen man. It's not Spider-Man.
You're not a grammar nerd. You're an orthography nerd, right? Pronunciation.
Well, no, not just that. It's like you should get people's names spelled correctly if possible, and you should pronounce them as accurately as you possibly can.
Agree.
Because you're supposed to be respectful to people. And, it really would make me kind of angry when I'm, like, watching soccer or something, and it would be, like, the Chinese team against France, right? And all the announcers are butchering all the Chinese names, and then they get names like Renoir and Yover. Like, they're totally fine with those. Like what's up with that,
There was that famous quote, I forgot, by an artist or something, that was like, well, if you could pronounce Dostoevsky and all of those Russian... authors, then you can learn.
Right, exactly. So, now let's move on. So, what are some of your favorite stories that have been debunked or dealt with by the AFCL?
So we actually, one piece done by two of our staffers in Taipei, Zhuangjing and Dongzhe, was about a presidential election poll that came out in the lead up to Taiwan's recent election in January. Poll said that the Kuomintang, one of the center-right, some people in Taiwan are going to cry out for me for describing it like that, the center-right political party, Kuomintang political party candidate Hou Youyi was ahead in the polls. Whereas up to that point, all of the I haven't done a thorough review, but from my experience with Taiwanese media, almost all the polls into Taiwan up to that point, middle of December, had shown the center-left Democratic Progressive Party, DPP candidate, Lai Ching-te, ahead in the polls.
Yeah, and he actually ended up
winning. So this poll, however, suddenly came out of the blue, made a storm for a few days that, Hou Youyi is shown as ahead of Lai Ching-te. Wow, okay. And there turned out to be very serious methodological problems. The organization that was conducting the polls, Finger Media, I think it was, Finger was associated with had ties with the mainland. I won't say with the CCP, but had extensive contacts at least with the mainland and had done some.
So it's possibly that this organization in the Chinese mainland wanted to influence the election through this poll?
Yes, that's the general gist. But again, we can't 100% prove that it was paid off or anything. But past contacts with them and past
That's very fascinating. That the possibly the CCP is trying to help the Kuomintang win when they were fighting the Chinese Civil War against each other.
History is a very History is very. There are no enemies and friends in politics, right?
Right. That's a great way of summing that one up. Do you have any other ones that...
Yes.
Wasn't Taylor Swift involved in one recently?
Taylor Swift was a recent one. Yes, that was... there was just an AI video going around of Taylor Swift saying that the U.S. would not be able to defend Taiwan or something to this effect, right? That was completely...
Yeah, and then that got a lot of play on social media. People, look, Taylor Swift.
Our article or the video?
The Taylor Swift's
sure.
account
Okay.
of whether or not the U.S. could defend Taiwan. Hey, everyone, Eugene here. The gist of this story is that the Chinese netizens were saying that Taylor Swift said that the United States could not defend Taiwan, but she never actually said this. And so the Asian fact-check lab said it was false. That spread all over social media.
Yeah.
And everybody in China is like, yeah, look, we're so mighty and strong because this military expert, Taylor Swift, thinks that... I mean, I didn't really understand why it was such a big deal, because what does Taylor Swift know
Teaser,
about...
we have The Rock coming up too, so just get ready for that.
Oh.
Yeah.
If you smell what The Rock is cooking. Jabroni.
To wrap it up, should you trust most sources of information, particularly news? And how can a person learn to distinguish if a news story is more or less trustworthy or biased?
The short answer is no, you shouldn't trust any single source of news, and you shouldn't, more broadly even if you can, like we were talking earlier about environment, source of information. If you're a Chinese person, you should not trust broadly the broad narratives portrayed in Chinese media. If you're an American citizen, you should not trust the broad narratives portrayed in American media. It has its own geopolitical interests that either directly or indirectly seep down.
Okay, all right. So thank you very much for joining us in the studio today. It was really eye-opening and lengthy, and this editing process will be lots of fun. But until next time, for Amy Lee, I'm Eugene Huang. This episode of RFA Insider was brought to you by the Asian Fact Check Lab, shining the light on false claims and showing all the fake facts are to blame.
Oh, I'm sorry. Facts! Facts! Oh, I'm sorry.
All right. This is going to be fun.